Hello everyone, how are you all today? This is Ashar Khan from Shiv Jyoti Educational Group Kota, and I hope that you are all well and fine at home. And so students, today we are moving on with our chapter, that is chapter number 9 of Geography, Solar Radiation, Heat Balance and Temperature. So students, up until now let us revise what we have learned. We have learned about insolation, that is the incoming solar radiation which our earth receives, correct? We learned about the heating and cooling of the atmosphere. We learned about three processes, that those were conduction, convection and advection. We learned about those. We learned about the phenomena of terrestrial radiation, and then we learned the heat budget of the earth. So we have covered these topics. If you are not familiar with these topics, I would advise that you go back and watch the other videos of this chapter before you watch this video, okay? So in this part 3 of the video of the chapter, we are moving on with our next topic, that is temperature, okay? We have covered solar radiation, we have covered heat balance, and now we are moving on with our next topic, that is temperature. So please open your book on page number 78. On page number 78 you will find your paragraph temperature. So please open your book, have your pencil ready, and let us start reading. So what is temperature? You have all heard this term, but let us study the definition of it. So up until now you have learned that the interaction of insolation with the atmosphere and the earth's surface creates heat, which is measured in terms of temperature. We know that so far the solar radiation which we receive from the sun, हमारे sun से जो solar radiation आती है, it heats up the earth. उससे earth क्या हो रही है? Heat up हो रही है. The term which we use to measure that heat, जिससे हम उस heat को measure करते हैं, that is called temperature. Okay? While heat represents the molecular movement of particles comprising a substance, underlined from here, the temperature is the measurement in degrees of how hot or cold a thing or a place is. That means if we want to know how hot or cold a thing or a place is, we will take its temperature. Okay, so that was temperature. What is temperature? It is the measurement in degrees of how hot or cold a thing or place is. So that was the first topic. Moving on to our second topic, we have factors controlling temperature distribution. That means in various places there is a variability in temperature. So let us see the factors which are involved in controlling temperature distribution. कि किस जगह पे temperature कितना है, वो किस factors पे depend करता है. Now let us see. The temperature of air at any place is influenced by, number 1, the latitude of the place. So number 1 factor is the latitude of the place. We will be covering each of the topic in detail in a minute. Let us first learn. Number 2, that is the altitude of a place. Number 3, we have distance from the sea. Okay, how far we are from the sea, that is the air mass circulation. Number 4, warm and cold ocean currents. And number 5, we have local aspect. So here are the 5 factors which control the variation in temperature. Number 1 is the latitude of the place. Number 2, the altitude. Number 3, the distance from the sea, the air mass circulation. 4th is warm and cold ocean current, and number 5 is local aspect. So now let us study each of these in detail. Our first is the latitude of the place. So let us study about that. We have already covered the topic where we learned that on our earth, okay, we have divided our earth into equal part with an equator, that you already know. We also know that the maximum amount of insolation is received at the equatorial area. That means the temperature of the equatorial area will always be high as compared to the temperature of the tropics, which are Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. correct? And then we have our frigid zones, correct? So this we already know that the farther you will go from the equator, the less temperature you will experience. So what does this term here mean? The latitude of the place means that the temperature depends upon the latitude. Let us read from the book. See, the temperature of a place depends on the insolation received. Insolation means the sunlight. It has been explained earlier that the insolation varies according to the latitude, hence the temperature also varies accordingly. It's a very simple term to learn that in the areas where there will be a lot of sunlight, the temperature will also be high. But in the areas where the sunlight is low, the insolation is low, the temperature will also be low. So that was the first point. Moving on to the second point, that is the altitude of a place. Second point, the altitude. Okay, altitude means height. You can write it with the pencil if you don't know already. The altitude means height. Now we know that the atmosphere is indirectly heated by terrestrial radiation from below. We know that our earth takes up the sun's heat, like this is the earth's surface. It will take up the sun's heat, correct? And the earth's surface will warm up, right? हमने पढ़ा है कि जो sun की energy है, the insolation, it will heat up the earth's surface, and after the earth's surface is heated, then what will happen? The air which is in contact with the earth's surface, it will also heat up due to the process of conduction. Okay, now see, the places near the sea level record higher temperature than the places situated at higher elevation. But we know that our earth's surface is not always plain. Supposedly there is a place where we have a mountain. Okay, on a place we have a mountain. See now, it's very simple. Which part of the earth's surface do you think will get heated up first? It will be this part, because much of the air is concentrated here. The higher you will go, the temperature will go low, because the air is not same here as it is on the surface of the earth. See, in other places the temperature generally decreases with increasing height. The temperature, as you will go, if height will increase, temperature of that place will decrease. Okay, जितना height बढ़ेगी, temperature उतना ही कम होगा. Now there is a very important definition given here, underline it. The rate of decrease of temperature with height is termed as the normal lapse rate. What is the normal lapse rate? The rate of decrease of temperature with height. At the rate in which the temperature decreases with the increase in height is called the normal lapse rate, which is 6.5 degrees Celsius per 1000 meter. So if you move 1000 meter above the sea level, the temperature will go down as 6.5 degree Celsius. Okay. Now our third point. The third point that we have is our distance from the sea. Again, it is very easy to understand this one. Distance from the sea means how far you are from a large water body such as a sea or an ocean. Another factor that influences with temperature is the location of the place with respect to the sea. We already know that compared to the land, the sea gets heated slowly and loses heat slowly. Okay, underline this. Compared to the land, the sea gets heated slowly and loses heat slowly. The land heats up and cools down quickly. Therefore, the variation in temperature over the sea is less compared to land. The places situated near the sea, underline this as well, the places situated near the sea come under the moderating influence of the sea and land breezes which moderate the temperature. That means the places which are near the sea, they will have moderate temperature like Mumbai, but the places which are farther from the sea, okay, they will have a high temperature like Kota. It is not situated anywhere near a large water body. That means the air which is flowing towards it will be in high temperature as compared to the places which are located near the sea. So students, the fourth point, which is our ocean currents, okay, the presence of warm and cold ocean current also affect the temperature of the surrounding areas. How so? Like the land and sea breezes, the passage of air masses also affect the temperature. The places which comes under the influence of warm air masses. Now, which places will come under warm air masses? You already know this. The places which are receiving higher insolation, correct? The place which is receiving a higher insolation, that is the equatorial area, they will have warmer temperature. That means the air around this area will rise up and move towards the polar area. Now the exact opposite will be happening in the polar area, because the polar areas are not receiving any more amount of sunlight. Light as much as the equatorial area is receiving, the polar areas are not having that amount of sunlight. As a result, the air around the polar areas will cool down and it will move towards the equatorial area. Okay, so this is the one point, that is the air masses. Now let us have a quick look at the ocean currents. Now similarly, the places located on the coast where the warm ocean current flow record higher temperature than the places located on the coast where the cold currents flow. So now student, this map here shows the movement of the warm and cold ocean currents. As you can see, the warmer ocean currents are flowing away from the equator. And you can see that the cold ocean currents, right, they are flowing towards the equator. Now one thing you will see is that the places which are located near the warmer ocean currents will experience warm temperature, and the places which are near the cold ocean currents, they will experience colder climate. Okay. Now one more thing that you should know, it's a very important thing that you must remember, that places where the warm and cold ocean current meet are the major fishing grounds. And so students, we have learnt about the factors controlling temperature of distribution. We learnt about latitude, that means how away you are from the equator. Altitude, how high you are. Distance from the sea, your distance, how much farther you are from any water bodies or ocean. And air mass and ocean currents. Now there is a fifth point given in your book, which is local aspects. What is local aspect? That means if your surrounding has certain factor which will affect the temperature, which will affect the insolation. हमने पहले भी discuss किया था. Supposedly in Kota there is a large thermal plant. Okay, what happens? A lot of smoke is emitted from its chimneys. Now that smoke will cloud up the atmosphere. Now because of that, a large part of insolation will be blocked in the upper layer only, right? The energy, the insolation won't receive till the surface. Now that is one of the local aspect which will affect the temperature of Kota. So this is local aspect. That means it is situated at only one place. It will vary from place to place. Okay, but the main 4 points are latitude, altitude, distance from the sea, and air mass and ocean currents. So now our next topic is distribution of temperature. See, the global distribution of temperature can well be understood by studying the temperature distribution in January and July. So we'll be having a look at the two of the maps in which we'll be studying the temperature over the month of January and July. The temperature distribution is generally shown on the map with the help of isotherms. Now here we are learning a new term, that is isotherms. What are isotherms? Underline it. The isotherms are lines joining places having equal temperature. Supposedly there are two places which are having equal temperature. So we'll draw a line joining these two places, and that line will be called the isotherm. Okay. Now let us have a look at the map of January. Now students, see here, this is the map of distribution of surface air temperature in the month of January. That means in the month of January, how the temperature will be distributed. You can see there are a lot of lines which are drawn on this map. What are these lines? We know that these lines are called the isotherms. Now here is our equator. See, now in the month of January, what will happen? The northern hemisphere will be tilted away from the sun and the southern hemisphere will be tilted towards the sun. ये हमें already पता है कि January में what will happen, that the northern hemisphere जिसमें Asia और अलग Europe, Northern America जैसे बड़े continents हैं, these continents will be away from the sun. That means they will experience winter climate, winter, and the southern hemisphere will experience summer. So now let us see what these lines means. Now if you travel on the line which is 20 degrees Celsius, okay, you will see that the places which are coming under this line, they all have the temperature 20 degrees Celsius. Same goes for 10 degree, 0 degree, minus 12.5 and minus 25 degree Celsius. Okay, so these lines, what are they doing? They are connecting places having similar temperature. Okay, see here 20 degree की जो हमारी line है, that is connecting North America, Mexico. Okay, then it is passing through Atlantic Ocean, then it is passing through the continent of Africa, that is Mali and Sudan. These countries it is crossing. then Saudi Arabia, then it is also going through India and further towards the Pacific. Now all the places which this line is covering, they will have an average of 20 degrees Celsius as their temperature in the month of January. Okay, now you will see a variation. See now, these lines are deviating especially when they are crossing the sea. They are deviating towards the North Pole. Why is it so? We know that the sea, हमारा जो oceans हैं, they lose their heat slowly as compared to the land. Now what will happen in the month of January? See, it's very important, it's very interesting as well, कि जो land है, वो तो जल्दी ही heat खो देगी and it will become cold. Okay, in the month of January, the northern hemisphere which is experiencing winter. Now the land will get cold very fast, but the sea won't. That is why the temperature of the sea will be higher. As you move upwards, you will see there are a lot of variation, but as the isotherms enters the land, it will again go down because the land is considerably cooler as compared to the sea in the month of January in the northern hemisphere. Okay, I hope you understood that why we have variation, because that there is a difference of temperature in the sea part and the land part. हमारी जो land है वो जल्दी ठंडी हो गई है, जबकि जो sea है as compared to the land are still warmer. Okay, now the exact opposite is going in the southern hemisphere. Okay, now what you are seeing, there is not much of a variation first of all in the southern hemisphere because there is not that much land. Okay, much of the land is focused in the northern hemisphere here. Now in this southern hemisphere, you can see the variation only when the isotherms are crossing a part which is land. Okay, the 20 degrees Celsius in the southern hemisphere, it is almost parallel, but when it is crossing the land part, there is a huge deviation, and as soon as the land part is over, again the temperature starts rising because the sea is hotter. Okay, now the next one is the month of July. The next diagram that we have. Okay, now this is the next diagram. You can find this diagram on page number 80 on your book. That is the distribution of surface air temperature in the month of July. Now July may again the entire process is inverted. The entire process is reversed. How so? Now you see the indentations are towards the equator. Why so? Because in the month of July the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun. Okay, जो northern hemisphere है वो सूरज की तरफ है. Now we will experience summer. Correct? हम क्या experience कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे? Summer experience कर रहे हैं northern hemisphere में. And the southern hemisphere people, they are experiencing winter. Now see, during the month of July, the northern hemisphere, the land part will be heated up because our earth will take up all the heat which is coming from the sun, but the sea will be colder. Okay, the sea, they will not absorb heat as much as the land does. ओके जितनी फास्ट रेट से लैंड एब्जॉर्ब करती है हीट, सी उस रेट से एब्जॉर्ब नहीं करेंगे, राइट, एंड द सी विल बी कंसिडरेबली कूलर एंड अगेन यू विल सी वेरिएशन इन द आइसोथर्म्स. हाउ सो? द एंटायर पार्ट, ओके, नाउ यू सी एज द आइसोथर्म enters the land, it will rise up. Why? Because the land is heated more in the month of July in the northern hemisphere. Now in the southern hemisphere the entire process will be different. Why? Because in the month of July the southern hemisphere is tilted away from the sun and hence will be colder. Now the land of the southern hemisphere in the month of July, what will happen? The land will be cooler as compared to the sea. Now there is a variation as the isotherms enters the land, there is a small indentation and it will go down. The same thing is experiencing here in Africa. But you will see it is not as much in Australia because it's a deserted area where the isotherm is passing. So here were the isotherms in the month of January and July. Now our next topic is inversion of temperature. Students, up until now हमने क्या पढ़ा है? That the temperature decrease with increase in elevation, right? जैसे जैसे आप ऊपर जाओगे जो temperature है, जो air है वो cold होगी. That means the higher you will go, the temperature will decrease. But which is called the normal lapse rate. But at times the situation is reverse. कभी कभी क्या होता है? Situation reverse हो जाती है and the normal lapse rate is inverted. Now what will happen when the normal lapse rate is inverted? It is called the inversion of temperature, which is usually of short duration but quite common nonetheless. Inversion of temperature happens for a very short time. Let us see. A long winter night with clear skies and still air is ideal solution for inversion. Supposedly there is a long winter night and there are no clouds and there is no air blowing. Now what will happen? The heat of the day is radiated off during the night, राइट? क्या होगा देखो, इन्वर्जन बहुत कॉमन है। रात में जो हीट थी अर्थ की, दैट इज ओके, दैट इज गिवन अवे। सो जो एक लेयर हमारे पास है वो है वार्मर एयर की। ओके, नाउ द अर्थ सरफेस हैज नो हीट ऑफ इट्स ओन। रात में जब अर्थ की सरफेस ने सारी जो हीट है वो ऊपर की एयर में ट्रांसफर कर दी है, नाउ द सरफेस डज नॉट हैव मच हीट, नाउ इट विल स्टार्ट रेडिएटिंग कोल्ड। ओके, पहले वो हीट दे रही थी बिकॉज इट हैड हीट विच वॉज एब्सॉर्ब बाय द सन इन द डे टाइम, बट नाउ ऑल द हीट इज गॉन एंड नाउ द अर्थ विल स्टार्ट रेडिएटिंग कोल्ड। अब जो अर्थ के पास जो एयर है इट विल स्टार्ट गेटिंग कोल्डर, देन व्हाट विल हैपन, The earth is cooler than the air above. अब जो अर्थ के पास की जो एयर है, it will be cooler than the air above. Over polar areas, temperature inversion is normal throughout the year. Now, surface inversion promotes stability in the lower parts of the atmosphere. Smoke and dust particles get collected beneath the inversion layer and spread horizontally to fill the lower strata of the atmosphere. Now, जो dust particles हैं, water vapors हैं, they will be trapped in this part. Now, what will happen? The temperature is again decreasing in this part of the area, and all the water vapor will start condensing. You call this phenomena fog. And in times you have also seen dew, right? What happens on glass, like glasses of your car or the leaves of plants? Small droplets are seen in the morning, right? We experience fog in the morning. We are not able to see. Why does that happen? Because earth के पास सुबह के टाइम पे होता है और ये क्यों? क्योंकि अर्थ के पास जो हवा है वो ज्यादा ठंडी हो गई है, बिकॉज द अर्थ डज नॉट हैव एनी हीट राइट नाउ इन द मंथ ऑफ विंटर्स. बट व्हाट विल हैपन व्हेन द डे कम्स? अगेन व्हेन द डे कम्स, व्हाट विल हैपन? द अर्थ विल स्टार्ट एब्जॉर्बिंग हीट, इट विल स्टार्ट राइजिंग अप, the heat will start rising up and the fog and the dews will disappear. Okay, dense fogs in morning are common occurrences, especially during winter season. This inversion commonly lasts for few hours until the sun comes up and brings to warm the earth. Okay, the inversion takes place in hills and mountains as well. Cold air at the hills and mountains produced during night flows under the influence of gravity, being heavy and dense. Now the cold air is always heavy and dense, which we know. That means जो warm air होती है वो तो ऊपर की तरफ उठती है, and the cold air which is heavy and dense it will go down. तो उसके अंदर जितने भी particles हैं they will start condensing because of the lower temperature of this area and hence will turn to fog or dew. This process is called air drainage. It protects plant from frost damages, and this process is called the air drainage, which is called temperature inversion. So student, this was it for our chapter. I hope you have watched all the videos related to it. Thank you so much for watching.